and a time of privileged knowledge sharing. Thank you very much again for deciding to spend the morning with us. For everyone that just joined the room, thank you very much. This is CTC Explained, Charting the Course Explained. And today we are going to be dissecting what it takes to access the prestigious universities in the US and the UK. So if you have ever had thoughts, intentions, or interest in getting into some of the most prestigious schools in the US and in the UK, then you are absolutely in the right place. We have a bevy of expert veteran speakers on this subject, led by the one and only Dr. Alo, who is the founder and CEO of Brains and Butter. As always, and in her usual excellent fashion, Dr. Alo is on the call and has been long before we joined. I will never pass up on an opportunity to hear Dr. Alo's gorgeous voice. Good morning, Dr. Alo. How are you doing today?
Good morning, the marvelous Miss Mark, always making your mark. Thank you so much for the introduction. Thank you.
You're welcome, Ma. Thank you so much, Ma. And it's a delight to see you here today. I know firsthand I want to say, bag of knowledge that you have cooked up for us today. But while the room is filling up, while we're expecting our guest speaker and also expecting some more families to join us, I want you to just give us a little sneak peek in your own special, vibrant way. What's something that we can absolutely look out for in this session? One of my favorite things about you is that anytime you have the opportunity to speak, it's just value, value, value. Just value is just pouring out everywhere. So what's one thing that we can definitely know we're taking away from today's engagement and conversation?
You can definitely take away bleeding edge thinking. People talk about cutting edge, but at Brains and Butter, we talk about the bleeding edge. We want to be at the forefront, and we are at the forefront of the educational sector because things are changing very, very fast. And it's important that we position our children rightly for this fast paced, changing world. It has been said that the careers that some of our children will embark on are yet to be born. So you can expect bleeding edge thinking on this call. So please pay attention. Thank you, Miss Mark.
Beautiful. Wow. Bleeding edge. One thing I trust Dr. Alo for is to come up with the spiciest quotes, the hardest hitting headlines and calls. So thank you very much, Dr. Alo. All right. And again, I just want to say thank you very much to everybody on this call. Like I mentioned before, while we are here, we're going to be spending a lot of time breaking down the pathway between getting access, between personal interest, as it were, potential, and getting into some of the most prestigious universities in the US and in the UK. One thing that we always emphasize here at Brains and Butter is the importance of planning ahead. And of course, that reflects in the name, charting the course, because we understand that it's not an impulsive decision. It shouldn't be that a child just wakes up and chooses a school. No, to get the absolute best and to set the child on the course, as it were, the path that will give that child the best access, the best opportunity, and the absolute best resources. It is important to plan ahead. So I just want to appreciate again everybody that's on the call. Thank you for taking your time out to speak with us today. I just want to go through the agenda very quickly so that we know that we're in for a good time. If you please just give me a moment to get my screen ready so that I will show us what we're in for today. And we see that we're having a very, very special time. Thank you very much for joining us, and please stay locked in. We have so much ready for you today.
Okay, so whilst Miss Mark is getting her screen ready, I just want to acknowledge our parents on the call, our associates and friends. Thank you for always being a part of our webinars. Thank you for always being, for always showing up to learn. I really, really applaud each one of you on this call. We don't take it for granted at all. It's the last Saturday in the month of September. A friend of mine sent me a message that she would have loved to be here, but she has another event happening. And I said to her not to worry. It's one of those Saturdays where so many things are happening. So for those parents who have joined us and for the students who have joined us as well, it's so good to have you on the call. Thank you for joining in. So Miss Mark, are you ready to share the agenda?
Absolutely, ma. And thank you very, very much for that warm and kind welcome. Okay, so I'm going to be sharing my screen now. So I just quickly walk us through what our conversation is looking like for today. We're going to be starting off with the introductions, of course. And like Dr. Alo has so kindly said, I again just want to appreciate all of our parents. One of our favorite things here at Brains and Butter is the amazing relationship that we have with our truly awesome parents. And we are grateful for your time. We are grateful to share the knowledge. We're going to be starting off with a conversation from Dr. Alo. Dr. Alo is going to be breaking down a few core benefits because that's the point of today's conversation. After the webinar that we held on July 20th called Navigating Admissions from the into the US. Yes, a lot of our parents reached out to us with questions and inquiries. And of course, we said, what better way to answer your questions firsthand and one-on-one than with a personalized and exclusive conversation like this? So we're going to be taking you through all of the nitty-gritty, starting with Dr. Alo's presentation and going straight into Mr. Amos Taffa's presentation. Like I said before, one of the major parts of this conversation is that we're going to be answering your questions. So please, I would like to implore you to leave your questions in the chat room. The Brains and Butter team is standing by in the chat room to take all of your questions, all of your inquiries, all of your concerns. As the day will be going by, we will be dropping some links for you, some resources, as well as some information. Please feel free to engage with this meeting. You can leave a comment in the chat room. You can raise up your hand if you want to ask a question. You can respond with an emoji. We love to see your participation and we love to see you involved. So thank you very much for that. All right, I'm going to be stopping my screen now and I'm going to be going straight without any further ado into the first part of this conversation. Now, I have the absolute privilege of reading the biography for our first speaker today. Our first speaker today is easily one of my favorite people, simply because of the wealth of knowledge and expertise at her disposal. Dr. Alo is the visionary founder and lead educational consultant at Brains and Butter, which is a consultancy that is dedicated to placing students in top UK boarding schools that align with their unique needs and talents. An accomplished academic, she holds a BSc in economics from the University of Hull, as well as an MSc in economics and development economics from the University of Nottingham, and of course, a PhD in development studies from the University of Essex. Beyond her role at Brains and Butter, Dr. Alo is also the convener of Brains and Banter, which is a platform for intellectual engagement amongst Africans in the diaspora. Dr. Alo has a passion for placing children, particularly children of African descent, in environments where they will thrive. Today, she will be sharing insights on the Charting the Course USA Pathway, which is a specialized program under the HighFLYERS vision and sponsored by Brains and Butter. Dr. Alo, good morning, ma. It's a privilege to have you on the call this morning.
It's a privilege to be here and to just really bond with our parents on this call. Thank you so much for that introduction. My Sussex alumni friends would be like, no, it's not Essex, it was Sussex. But not a problem. So many places in the US, in the UK, sorry, Sussex, Wessex, they have similar names. So not a problem at all. Thank you so much for that amazing introduction. So I'll be sharing my screen now. And I'm sure you can all see my screen. Okay, so I realized as I was preparing for today, my presentation today, that this month actually makes it exactly 20 years that I began my PhD at the University of Sussex. My name is Alo, as you already know, and I have exactly 20 years of experience in the educational sector. Now, before I started my PhD, I actually remember moving to my accommodation on the 1st of October 2020. Sorry, 2004. 2004. Many of our children who will be taking this course were not born in that year. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I'm getting old. I know I have some older aunties on this call, but I just felt like, wow, 20 years ago. Before I started my PhD, however, the library was my playground. The library literally was my playground. Lecture halls were like my laboratories. I thoroughly enjoyed being in the space of academia. I loved being in halls of learning. I loved being in rooms of education. I would love to look at, profiles and pictures and wall paintings of mind-blowing thinkers. Amos will soon tell you that even by the year 2004, education was already changing, because once Google was introduced, things began to change. Things have changed drastically between then and now, when many of us would really love going to the libraries and spaces of learning. People are sitting behind their laptops now. However, with a love for learning and research, it was just a no-brainer for me to carry on with my PhD and just enjoy the journey of research, specialize in a particular path of learning, and just blossom from there. Now, when I look back at my own journey, I am thankful, exceedingly thankful, that I had people along the way that specifically guided me on the journey. It made a world of difference. I remember in particular a conversation with a PhD student. So I was doing my master's at the University of Nottingham. This is, there's certain moments in your life that are defining moments, and you look back and you realize that, there's Chronos and there's Kairos. There's a moment in time, but there are destiny moments, and you just know when you have those Kairos destiny moments, they are game changing. They're game changers. I didn't even realize at the time, but I've always remembered that conversation. So we were in the foyer in the economics department, and I was saying to him, honestly, I'm not sure what I'm doing after my master's. Like, I was 19 at the time. I wasn't sure if I was ready to work. I was confused. I was confused. But you wouldn't know I was confused, because I liked economics so much, and I just was ready to continue on that path. But at that point, this is me doing my master's. So imagine, right? How much more younger children. At that point, I wasn't sure what next. And this man from Ghana, he was doing his PhD, and he said to me, you might just be able to do a PhD degree. And have you considered University of Sussex? They have an Institute of Development Studies. He actually had a tete-a-tete with me about, okay, so what is it you like? What do you enjoy? What part of economics are you really into? Like, where would you want to specialize? And that's how we just had a very friendly banter. I thank God that I was in the foyer at the same time as him. Now, that is just one of many defining moments that helped me along the way. And I'm sure if you cast your mind back, you would also see that there were people who helped to support you along the journey. This is essentially what charting the course is about. But this time it is intentional. It is experts that are working with your children and with you as well. Because it is important that as a parent, you are informed. It takes a village. You're working with the schools. You're working with consultants. You're doing your own independent research. You have people who are giving your children those extracurricular skills. You may have a sports coach or a public speaking coach or a soft skills coach. There are many people in this village that will help to support and guide your child along the path that they should go. And the Bible actually talks about train up a child in the way that they should go. This is essentially what charting the course is about. Now, let me move quickly on. There are three things I always think about that have guided me as a framework this past 20 years and counting. And it is these three questions: what, why, how. I remember again when I was doing my PhD, we had, I think it was the BBC that was coming to do an interview, either BBC or ITV. They came and they wanted to speak to some of us. And I was thinking, I don't know what questions they're going to ask us. How do I prepare for these questions? And this framework was one that helped me with my research. And I deployed it. So, what is it they're trying to ask me? Why is this important? And how? So that's what I'll be using today in explaining charting the course to you. What is it about? Why is it important? And how are we going to go about this course? I have already alluded to it in my introductory remarks, but I'll be fleshing it out a bit more in the course of this presentation. So charting the course, this is, I think, is it Gen Z's or it's a phrase, no pun intended. It's a course. It's charting the course, but it is a course. And it is a 9-month course. It is a course within a community. I'll tell you a bit more about the community shortly, but it's essentially a course that your child is going to go on, but you're going to go on that journey with your child as well. Now, why is this course very important? I remember looking, I wouldn't say that their names, so I don't give free adverts here. I remember looking at an educational consulting firm, and they helped prepare children for Ivy League universities in the US. And the least course they had was $16,000. And I'm thinking to myself, the child is in school. So you're paying school fees already. And this is an additional course. And this is where it is starting from. And they literally have waiting lists because it's international. It's children from all over the world that access this course. Now, if you want to position your child for international relevance, do not think that you can do it all by yourself, sitting in your living room or by watching YouTube channels alone. They do help, but my word is, are there many benefits for actually enrolling your child onto a course where there is expert guidance being given? Imagine going on a journey. Someone has been on that journey before, has guided other people on that journey. Why do you want to go on that journey alone? Why not have a tour guide help you and show you the course and help you chart your way along this course that your child is going on? It makes a big difference. I started by sharing my example with you about the Kairos Moments conversation I had that helped me and supported me in taking the PhD route, which has been so defining in my career and in my life as a whole. So it is important to enroll your child for courses like this, because then you expose them, and exposure is big. Exposure. When we had a team meeting yesterday, I was saying to my team members that I know that Africans like their football, they like their athletics, but there are other games that we can play in. There's golf. I mean, horse riding is coming up. There's so many things. We just need to be exposed and our minds opened up, and our children are given these opportunities to learn, how to do these things. I'm learning swimming at an old age. It's not funny. It's not funny. Story for another day. So for children who learned how to swim and swim like a fish, amazing. Anyway, it makes a difference when you have someone who has gone on that path before, who has guided others, work with your child and give that expert guidance. Now, how are we going to run this course? It is essentially going to be modules and milestones. So we have a very fine curriculum planned for your child, and Mr. Amos Taffa will be talking us through the many exciting things that your children will get exposed to. I can tell you hands on heart, they will not be the same at the end of this, by the end of this course. Beyond just even getting into top universities, the change, the transformation that will happen in your child, you will see it firsthand. So let me quickly move on now to my next slide. So remember, I said that charting the course is a course within a community. So we have a community for our students in sixth form. Now, I need to be honest with you, this is exclusively for brains and butter students. So for families who have engaged our services, who have made a financial commitment with us, this community is for them. Whether they join us in year 7 or year 8, wherever they join us, once they get into sixth form, they're automatically brought into the HighFLYERS community. Or someone was even saying, are you sure this is not an academy? It is exclusively for them. Now, for this cohort of students, we increasingly started getting inquiries. I mean, before now, we had gotten inquiries about admissions into the US. But we said, brains and butter is all about the United Kingdom. The US is not our forte, as it were. So we would refer them to other people. Now, these weren't clients that were coming in to the UK first before going to the US. And then in the past 2-3 years, we have clients who were coming to the UK and would say to us from the beginning, they want their children to go to the US for their university education. And we realized that this was being requested for a number of reasons. The scholarship opportunities, many of them are US citizens, or they have family and friends in the US, high earnings, like quality of life, all sorts of reasons. And parents will say to us, I remember 2 conversations, 2 parents who don't even know themselves, and they said, you really need to look into the US side because we like how you look after us on the UK end. Can you replicate this on the US end side of things? And we started to pay attention, and thankfully, experts like Mr. Amos Taffa came our way, and you'll be hearing from him shortly. So, as I've explained, the charting the course is a course within a community. The community is HighFLYERS, and charting the course is a course within this community. Now, today we're going to be focusing on the US pathway, on the USA pathway. The whole purpose of the community, of the HighFLYERS community, is to help our students chart the course for takeoff. We want them to have thriving careers. We want to minimize heavily any confusions that they may have as to what they want to specialize in. In fact, for those in the UK, you have to specialize early. In the US, for the first 2 years, you take a wide array of options, right? You don't have to specialize as early as you need to in the UK. So the purpose of the HighFLYERS community is to really position them aright and help them chart the course so that they can take off. Now, as I explained, access is exclusively for our clients, for our families who have engaged us. However, if you take on one of our courses, you also get access into this community. Now, access to the community is automatic for clients, but it is not free. However, they get some months free. Okay, I have already said that there are different pathways. You know, there's UK, there's the USA. Some people even want to go to regions outside of these 2 places mentioned. Career counseling is a big one, and just general all-round counseling to help prepare your child for higher education, and a flourishing higher education, not higher education where they're going to study this particular course because that's what dad or mom thinks, but because this is what they really like and they have prepared themselves to flourish in that regard. So finally, I'm going to rush through this because time is going by so fast. as part of being your tour guide on the Charting the Course USA pathway, we'll be talking to your children about their vision and really start to help them distill their interest, give them a vision, give them a picture. Vision is so important. And in my experience, you will be amazed as to how many of our children aren't quite clear on this vision. In fact, sometimes I worry that they haven't seen as many role models. I still had an upper sixth student say to me that, oh, are there some job opportunities or people I can expose her to in the medical field, because she wants to know what other careers are there are, and just really help her vision and see what will she do when she's done with her sixth form. What kind of degree should she be thinking about because of the kind of career pathway she wants to go on. Vision is big, and Amos will be telling us more about that. Now you have to think about the location. Where we need to narrow that down. Think about the location. Think about the weather. Think about proximity to people or accessibility. There's no proximity. You need to be prepared. Miss Mark was saying in her introductory remarks that one of the things we're big on at Brains and Butter is planning ahead. Planning ahead. There's some nursery schools that parents, in fact, some schools, not even just the nursery schools, some prep schools where parents register whilst their babies, whilst they're still in their tummies, whilst they're pregnant. Planning ahead makes a big difference. Now, you also need to think about the fees, right? And the financing. Quality education, it is not cheap. Health and education, they are public goods, but when you want them to be delivered in a private way, it is expensive, and you have to plan for these expenses. I know families that will literally buy a house or two, and that is for the child's school fees. Or families who can't afford to buy a house or two and will prep the child to get a scholarship, because this education, this quality education needs to be financed, and we need to talk about it. We need to have those conversations, and we can guide you along the way, knowing your circumstances and seeing what options are available for you, for your child. There are timelines you need to be aware of as well. There are timelines and there are deadlines. And I realize that many of our parents aren't actually aware of these timelines. They actually do not know. And that is what we'll be educating you on. What are the timelines? When should you start? How early should you start? How far in advance should you start this journey if you're thinking of XYZ university, which is why we go back to the vision. When, if you know you want your child to go to an Oxbridge University, that's Oxford or Cambridge, how early should you really start preparing the child and getting the child profile ready to position them for an amazing application, to get a scholarship? How early should we start this preparation? You need to understand the timelines. Now, the charting the course, we talked about the how, what, why, how. If you don't remember anything else from today, please remember that framework. It is so easy and so helpful. So we've talked about the what, we've gone through the why, now I'll be rounding up with the how. And I did say at the start that it is modules and milestones. Mr. Amos Taff will be talking us through the modules, and I will be walking you through the milestones and working with your child through those milestones. Now, this course starts in November. It starts November 2024, and it's going to run for 9 months. Now, in this between November and July, August of 2024, we'll be taking you through key milestones you need to be aware of and how to help get your child ready. Many families start the preparation when they make the application. The preparation needs to start before you make the application. So at this point, I'm just going to hand over back to Ms. Mark, I know we were supposed to have Q&A. I'm sorry that I've gone over time. I was given 20 minutes. So do we go? I think we should go straight to Amos, and then at the end we can have the Q&A. So over to you, Miss Mark, and thank you everyone for
Wow.
listening.
Thank you so much, Dr. Alo. When you speak like this, my notes are always so full. And I know that you are restraining yourself from divulging, but I just want to assure our parents that we're going to get to a section of this program that is dedicated to question and answer. So please leave your questions. I'm sure you have questions already about the HighFLYERS community. I'm sure you have questions already about the USA pathway. Any other questions you might have. One of the things that Dr. Alo said is that this community is very exclusive for brains and butter clientele, and that's because we prioritize our clients above all others. So your well-being, your interests are definitely priority. Please leave your questions in the chat room. Our team is standing by to take them, and we can't wait to get started on your questions. Thank you so much, Dr. Alo. That was such a brilliant presentation and a brilliant walkthrough. I have questions already, but you have already said to go into the next part of our conversation, and so I will be doing that. But before I do that, of course, it is my true privilege and delight to introduce our next speaker. Mr. Amos Taffa is a multifaceted educator and consultant with a profound passion for academic excellence and scientific inquiry. Originally from Nigeria, he came to the United States in 2007 to pursue his bachelor's degree, where he earned a degree in chemistry pre-med with a minor in philosophy. Mr. Amos's academic journey is marked by a deep curiosity and dedication to understanding complex scientific and philosophical concepts, including the intricacies of biochemistry and the philosophy of science. Mr. Amos is also an accomplished author and tutor, and is quite famous for his book From Counting to Calculus. Today, Mr. Amos will be discussing the CTC USA Pathway Program under the HighFLYERS vision, and will be sharing strategies to help students navigate the complexities of US admissions process effectively. Good morning, Mr. Amos.
Good morning. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. It's such a delight to see you, Mr. Amos, and thank you very much for your time. I'm particularly excited to hear you speak, especially as to the vision as it ties with charting the course, preparing a plan for excellence, and also becoming a part of the HighFLYERS community as a launch pad to that success. Can you just quickly tell myself and our parents who are eager on this call one thing that we are definitely working with at the end of your presentation?
Well, I hope that it leaves us thinking of the best ways to help our children flourish in all the gifts they've been blessed with, and not just thinking about them getting a quality education, which that will definitely be discussed, but really fine-tuning that education so that they can be, they can make things better for those who come after them. So they chart a new course for the future generation, so to speak.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Mr. Amos. All right, we look forward to your session, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I am going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, you should be able to see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Yes, sir, we can.
Perfect. So let's talk about the importance of vision, and then I'll tie it all together with charting the course. So basically, I write and I teach math and science in different capacities. By God's grace, I have been blessed with the opportunity to write and teach math.
Sorry to interrupt you, Amos. Would you mind turning your phone in such a way that we can see your PowerPoint presentation really clearly?
Is that helpful?
I think that's better. Yeah. Is there a slideshow function that you can use?
Yes. Is it, let's see, now is it
Perfect.
on?
It is. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So I didn't mean to click through that fast. But yeah, so basically I've been blessed with the opportunity to teach math and science. I help schools in the primary and secondary with their math curriculum. So I currently do math consulting for schools. And then I also help universities with their early math remedial programs. My program, Counting to Calculus, covers all of that. Now, the reason why that's important and interesting is by God's grace, I'm familiar with the system, let's just say from preschool all the way to PhD and professional school. So I did some of my PhD work in North Dakota. I live in Texas now, and I'll explain more of that as we go. That's my family, my wife and 7 children. And our oldest son is now in basically in Nigeria. You would call that either JSS1, around JSS1. And we've been able to use some of my counting to calculus material. And so he's gonna, I didn't force him to do a lot of math. He wants to do a lot of math. And so hopefully he'll be in calculus here in a couple of years. This is the Learning Institute for Excellence, which is based in Texas, and that's part of what supports my curriculum work. So I'm going to start our presentation with a quote that I gave yesterday, which is essentially knowledge-based education expired on September 4th, 1998. The reason why I say that is prior to this day, and especially back in the 15 and 1600s, which was the time where, we just got the printing press. If you wanted to learn something, you had to find someone and find a time and go make it work. And so one of the greatest mathematicians who ever lived is a man by the name of René Descartes. And René Descartes actually was a teacher to the Queen of Sweden, but he had to teach her at 5 a.m. in the morning, sometime around 5 a.m. in the morning. So the printing press came about 1450, and René Descartes was doing this about 1600. But René Descartes ended up dying of pneumonia. He died at the age of 54. And I bring this up because on September 4th, 1998, Google released its pages to the world, right? Initially, they had done it at Stanford, and then now it was open. So when that happened, textbooks and materials became readily available to everybody, whatever was up there at the time. And all of this has only increased over time. So then the question becomes, knowledge is no longer the commodity that matters. Knowledge is cheap. As a matter of fact, some people would argue, what's the point of going to college? I think college is a good thing, but their point in that is they're saying, if the knowledge is there, why are you going? Very good question. Now, what is the goal? And that's what I'm going to talk about. If you want to become, if you're aspiring to become an electrical engineer, you should probably know who Jensen Huang is. This is going to make my point clear. Jensen Huang is the CEO of NVIDIA. NVIDIA is the 3rd company by market cap. And I will say here that they're probably going to be the first by market cap. They know it sooner than you know it. And that's partly because they haven't even begun yet. They're sort of preparing the field. And I know that partly because of listening to some of what they're working on. And so if you want to be an electrical engineer, it probably makes sense to know the person who is leading an organization that is doing a lot of things in that space. And so when I talk about education, knowledge-based education expiring, what I think has replaced it is more the vision-based learning model. What do you want to do with your life, and how can I guide you to that destination? Now, as part of that destination could involve going to college, charting the course can help with that. But some students might say, but I don't know how to navigate, figuring out what to do with my life. That's where the vision piece comes in. And if you know for a fact that you want to be an electrical engineer, I have nuts and bolts and mentors that I could potentially recommend, right? That's how the vision-based model, why it's important. Jensen Huang went to, he got his education not in a prestigious university necessarily, but he had a vision. And today, Jensen Huang actually gave the commencement address this year at Caltech. And if you know anything about universities in the world, the best physicists, some of the best physicists that have ever lived went to Caltech. Some of the best physics instructors, people like Richard Feynman, went to Caltech. And when he gave the commencement speech, he made a comment about hiring some of the people, and some of his top engineers are Caltech graduates. So when you have a vision and you know about Caltech and how it fits into your vision to being an electrical engineer, That's what you then focus on. That's why Amos focuses a lot on the vision. Because if you want to study electrical engineering, I wouldn't put you, a Harvard recommendation for you. You could choose to still go there. I mean, Harvard is okay there in engineering. I'm not saying they're bad, but it's not the spot that is best for a child who's very gifted and directed towards engineering. So the importance of vision cannot be overstated. If you want to study computer science, of course, MIT and Cambridge and Caltech and Rice are good places. If you want to study law, of course, you look at Yale and Harvard. I don't know if you've ever done a study looking at the US presidents, but you notice there's a trend. A lot of them come out of Yale and Harvard. If you want to study business, Stanford and Harvard, but Stanford is also very good at other things, right? Remember the analogy I used in the beginning about Google. So then imagine if a child is writing a letter to go to MIT. In the admissions essay, they could say something to the effect of, as I was studying the work of the Sergey and Larry, who started Google at Stanford, I realized that they could have used this other technique, which I'm willing to explore. Now, when a child talks like that in the essay, MIT is interested. That makes sense. That means that the child is paying attention to the history of the field that they're interested in, even if their school doesn't talk to them about those histories. So that's where standing out is important, but it's important to know the vision and you stand out in your essay. And those are things that we'll discuss in the course. So when you look at the United States, it's big. The United States is a very enormous place. It's literally the United States, meaning that each of these states are actually like their own country. They have their own laws. So if somebody causes trouble in Minnesota, for example, and they are in Wisconsin for, they will be judged by the laws of Wisconsin if they cause trouble in Wisconsin. I apologize. That's what I mean. So if you're from Minnesota, but you were in Wisconsin and you caused trouble in Wisconsin, Wisconsin is going to try to give the laws from their land to discuss your issue. There are 50 states in America. This map is showing us the 48. Most Nigerians probably don't want to go to the one in the north called Alaska, because it's very cold and it's quite empty. And then the other state is Hawaii. And Hawaii is literally like going to 8 hours further west. So that means that if your parents want to visit you, they need to plan to travel many, many, miles. So anyway, so the 48 states here are the main states people go to. And of these 48 states, almost every one of them has a state university called something like the University of Nebraska or the University of Minnesota. So when you see the letter M on the top of that map, that's the University of Minnesota. The University of Wisconsin is right next to it. Let me just say something quick about this. Many people might think of education and think of it in terms of state universities are not as good as private universities and so on. The University of Minnesota is a powerhouse when it comes to medicine and certain fields. So never, I guess my encouragement to families is never undermine a university because it's called Minnesota State University or the University of Wisconsin, for example. These universities are actually quite exceptional. Georgia Tech, for example, is very exceptional. And so the University of Florida is doing research right now that most places in the world are not doing. So it's very important to know that every state in their frontline university, they've invested a lot and they want to be exceptional. And so that's a little bit of the map. The top part of this map, all the states, you see where it says the letter N around the center? If you just draw a straight line around that N and go up above, you can expect to have a little colder, experience in terms of temperature. It's a little colder in the Midwest and above. And if you go below, you see Texas has a lot of universities. That's the one with UH. It has the Longhorns, University of Texas at Austin. Anyway, so those states right next to Texas, those will be warmer. The letter A is Arizona. Anyways, you can look at all this later, but it's important to think about climate. It's important to think about region. California also has a lot. So Texas, California, Florida, Illinois, and New York would be the ones that have a lot of universities. We already talked about this the last time, but I just wanted to mention it briefly, that it takes about 120 credits to graduate from your undergraduate degree. And so when I'm helping students, I'm thinking, okay, let me put it this way. When I help my students, which I've been doing this now for about 12 years by God's grace, but when I help students, I'm actually thinking about, like, what way do you want to change the world? So I'm not thinking about just their university. I'm thinking about what's the long goal. So, for example, I've had students who say things like, oh, I want to, maybe they say something like, I want to build a rocket or whatever. Okay, so then I'm not just thinking about their 4-year degree. I'm thinking about SpaceX and internships. I'm thinking about networking events that I'm going to invite them to. And so I have students still today that would reach out to me once in a while to just check back on, hey, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about that? So I really want you to know, I'm not just thinking about getting a good college degree. I have friends who went to MIT that are still not sure what to do with their lives. And so, well, they know some of what to do, but they're still not certain of some direction. So just getting into MIT and graduating from there doesn't solve a lot of issues for some people. They still need that guidance. And so what I commit to what I commit to my students is, remember, it's like a mentor that you reach out to if you have a question, because I want to see you get to your destination. So you need 120 credits to graduate, and there are strategic ways to get those credits down to like 60 to 90 credits based on how you strategize, right? It's called like a chess game. For example, one summer I got one winter break, I got 9 college credits, just over 4 weeks. Normally that would take you about 16 weeks to maybe, for some people it might be longer, but I was able to complete a whole semester in literally less than 4 weeks by writing a series of papers. So again, that strategy is there. And it saves you a lot of money. It saves you a lot of time. These are the strategies that I can share with people over time. Anyways, we'll go into the nuts and bolts in the actual course as far as getting the master's and PhD track and so on. Now, why do I emphasize STEM? One of the reasons that I emphasize STEM is America needs more people in STEM. So therefore, if you actually do graduate work in STEM in America, especially in chemistry or physics, you don't pay for it. They pay you to do it. So not only do you go for free, but they pay you to do it for the graduate level. I bring that up because, again, on a practical side of things, it is easier to get funding in the STEM fields by far. Okay, so I gave that example of electrical engineering. And so, for example, I would tell a person, if you're looking at computer science or electrical engineering, these are 3 schools that should be on your list. The first school, MIT and Caltech are very selective. And so when you apply to universities, what you want to do is you want to have your schools that you are reaching high to get to, your schools that are difficult to get to but more doable, like Rice University, for example, in this case. And then you have a third category of schools that have a way higher acceptance rate, so at least you're guaranteed to get in. So, for example, it is not as hard to get into the University of Wisconsin in the city of River Falls. It's not as hard to get in there, so you can put that as a list. Or the University of Texas at Dallas, or the University of Georgia. So again, these are things we'll teach people. You need to have about 2 schools where these are hard to get into, but I'm going to aspire to go there. 2 schools that are more doable. They're difficult, but more doable. And then 2 schools that you're guaranteed to get into. Please note that, again, it's not just getting into these schools. I highly recommend that people choose majors that make sense, because when you go for a visa interview from Nigeria, that is a hurdle you would need to jump. And that's something that would be helpful if you said you want to study electrical engineering rather than, for example, I want to study English, because that would be a very difficult case to make for the consulate. So SAT. The SAT and the ACT used to be very different in terms of who would accept what. The SAT was more for the East and the West Coast. It was more for schools like Harvard and Princeton. The ACT was very common in the Midwest. That has all changed. Harvard will accept your ACTs just as much as they'll accept your SATs. And keep in mind that some of these universities, almost everybody who applies to them gets a perfect score. So that's not where you distinguish yourself, right? Where you distinguish yourself is in the experiences that you bring to the table. That's really key, is the experiences that you bring to the table. It's the things you're learning outside of your traditional schooling. It's the papers that you're publishing before you've even graduated high school. I know, I just said that. It's the papers you're publishing before you even graduate high school. That is very doable. And that's part of what we do at STEM Excellence, which I'll talk about later. We help people to publish papers by getting mentoring early on. And those papers, you can tell the university that you've published papers about things that you're passionate about, or essays or books that you've written before you've even graduated. Okay, so I'm not going to go into this in detail right now because these are just the nuts and bolts. But again, this PowerPoint is something you can reach out to Brains and Butter if you have questions on any of these. But basically, start planning early, especially if you want to go to MIT, Harvard, or Stanford. which leads me to a quick comment on timelines. If you want to go to Harvard, MIT, or Stanford, and you're in your last year right now, you need to be working on your application as I'm speaking right now. So once we get off the call right now, you should probably go on the website of MIT, make an account, and start writing the essays that are required. That's the timeline you need, like right now, because your application should probably go in by November or December, if you want to start next year in August. Now, if you want to apply to the regular admissions process with many universities, then please still have your application in by January. January is a good time to get that in. If you are a junior, we call it juniors, but in Nigeria, it will be SS2. In England, technically in England, it will actually be when you're getting ready to finish your GCSEs. But basically, if you are a junior and you don't want to start school next year, you want to start school in 2026, God willing, that gives you some time, but you can still start your application process, create an account. There's something called the common application. The common application is basically one place where you get access to many universities, and like you just fill in their code is called, and you fill in the same questions that all the universities want. And that is also one way to get going with Stanford and some of these universities. Fill in a common application. So you need a common app account, and you also need the university-specific account for places like MIT. MIT is unique enough that they have their own application. Now, just because you're on the common app doesn't mean you're not a prestigious university. MIT just chose to have its own. You need to take the SAT or the ACT. I have a diagnostic test that they've provided for free that I would recommend you take one or the other. Actually, take both of them first. See how you perform on both exams, and then decide which exam you want to focus on. This is important because some people will do better on the SAT than the ACT. The ACT has 60 math questions in 60 minutes, for example. The SAT gives you more time for math. And so it's important to know how you handle test taking. So that's a little bit about the tests. You need to get recommendation letters, transcripts. It is helpful to have college courses completed before you graduate high school. That is part of what I do. Is I teach college courses to high school students, and then when they apply to universities, they tell the universities, I already took calculus 1 and 2. MIT likes to hear that. Now, the crazy thing is MIT will make you take calculus 1 and 2 in their own classroom, but at least you can have a head start. Because when you get into places like MIT, you're competing with the best math students in the world. And sometimes you're sitting with 150 students in your classroom. And that's hard to put up your hand and ask a question versus smaller universities. The cost of college varies. And so there's price points for everybody. Keep that in mind. 80, 60, 30. Just remember those three sets of numbers. 80, 60, 30. 30 is the lowest, sort of the cheapest general average college cost per year. But your children, when they come here, they can get jobs on campus, and you should be able to see them maybe bringing those numbers down, maybe another 10 to 15,000, depending on what jobs they get. Okay, this is how I help students with getting college credit, which we could talk about later on. We've talked about timelines and deadlines. I'm just going to repeat them one more time. If you want to apply to top universities, some of them will require you to apply in the fall. The fall is from September to December. So from September to December is when you put in those applications for those top universities. If you want a more traditional deadline, January is very common for those applying to start in August. There are some universities that allow you to apply as late as April or May, and some of them even have rolling admissions, but those are not typically your prestigious, difficult universities to get into. These are the dates. So parents, make sure you take a picture of this and save it somewhere. These are the dates for the SAT and the ACT over the next few months. And so, for example, the SAT of August already happened. The one of September was the ACT. It already happened. So on October 5th, there's an SAT exam. If you're taking the SAT or the ACT, it is a good idea to dedicate about 6 weeks prior to the exam to take a series of tests. And I'll give you guys this quick bonus just because you woke up. So just because you're giving us some of your Saturdays. So I'll give you this free JARA, we call it in Nigeria. Let me give you JARA. If you want to excel on the SAT or the ACT exam, use deliberate practice. Deliberate practice is what I used when I took the National Common Entrance exam in Nigeria at Air Force Primary School. So let me quickly land with a little bit of my story. When I was in primary school at Air Force Primary School in Victoria Island, Lagos, I came from Adamawa State, moved to Lagos. And so it was great change there. But by God's grace, right from primary 1, I started taking the second position in my class. When I got to primary 5, I ended up being the first in my class, but I was also the best in common entrance. So I never did primary 6 because I actually, nobody in primary 6 scored up to 500 and I scored 556. So I went right into JS1 at Federal Government College, Lagos. I was involved in JETS Club, Junior Engineers, Technologists, and Scientists. I was involved in JETS Club in secondary school. I was the president of JETS Club. I was also the head boy in Federal Government College in Johannesburg, Lagos. Why do I bring all of this together? What do I do today? I'm a medical physicist working in science. I'm doing the very thing that I used to do as a child, just on another level in the hospitals and radiology and so on. Isn't it interesting that right from primary 4, you could probably have said, yeah, this guy is going to become a scientist. I mean, it was very clear. Now, what happens if somebody pivots and I went into a different field, for example? Well, the skills I would have gained in my science journey would have still been helpful to me today, but I had a direction that I was going in. But imagine if I had no direction that I was going in, I wouldn't have applied myself to educational excellence as much as I did. So having a vision deals with the problem of going, getting distracted and maybe not applying yourself to excellence in education. Here's my case in point. American students in primary 5 to JSS 2 have some of the worst performance in education in the world. I think, and I would argue, that part of the reason is because they're actually not required to have a vision. And therefore, there's no reason for them to care. So compare them to their counterparts in Singapore, India, and Nigeria, and you see a great, great divide. And so Nigerian students have a great advantage because their parents do encourage them. Now, I will encourage parents to please, let's be careful not to force our children to have a vision that we want them to have. They should have a vision for themselves. But of course, if it's impractical, then tell them to please wake up. What I mean by impractical is if they say, I want to become the next Leonardo da Vinci artist. You can do good art, but you can't bank on that. You still do well in it, don't get me wrong. But if you apply to come to school in America and you put art as your degree, some US consulates will not take you seriously. So you should get here with your maybe economics or whatever, or chemistry or biology. And then when you come here, you can do your arts work on the side. So I'm just saying that's a strategy to keep in mind. Okay, let me land the plane. Right from primary school, I was gravitating to a certain direction. I loved paper, I loved pens, I loved drawing, math problems, whatever. So therefore, it makes sense that I would go into mathematics. So deliberate practice is what I used to study for the National Common Entrance. And what I did was I took a test. Based on my results, I would do my corrections, and then I'll take another test and do my corrections. That's the JARA that I'm giving you, because that's the method that I've helped hundreds of students to use to raise their SAT and ACT score. Okay, let's conclude this. I'm going to skip. That's a little bit of our math curriculum, which took all the math textbooks pretty much from every country of the world in terms of what they teach, and I created it into one curriculum from counting to calculus. We also have a book. This is a book from a friend of mine, Keith Cresson, which follows the same idea that I did in my book. I did an interview with Keith Cresson. It's on our our YouTube, Learning Institute for Excellence, and Keith Cresson is an electrical engineer. He was the vice president of Qualcomm. Qualcomm makes the chips for our cell phones. And so I bring in people like Keith Cresson into conversations with our students, or I record those interviews because I want my students to hear from people who are doing cutting edge research. Because right now, Keith is now the CEO of Memorex, which is the company that makes the AI chips for cars and things like that. Okay. This is my last major slide, and that's what I said, STEM excellence. Basically, we want to raise the next generation of scientists, mathematicians, and thinkers who also know the history and philosophy of science, logic, and theology. And I believe that Nigeria and Africa is ripe because Africans have that base of understanding that God created the world. So now let's give them the highest level of education to match that knowledge of the creator of the universe. And maybe we'll see the next generation of Newtons and Einstein, the next generation of top scientists who also have a faith to go off on. So this is an example of that person, and I'm ending with him. The guy on the left is Carl Friedrich Gauss, and the guy on the right is James Clerk Maxwell. The reason why you and I are on this call right now and why it's working at all is because of James Clerk Maxwell. He's the father of electrical engineering, but he was a very strong man of faith. Maxwell's equations literally changed the world. I will talk more about that at another time, but I just wanted to let you know that there are people who are exceptional in math and science who also love truth and have faith. And that there's nothing wrong with that. And that's part of what I want to do in helping the Nigerians and families, not just Nigerians, but families who want to raise the next generation of top thinkers. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much, Mr. Amos. Wow. Wow, what a truly delightful time. Always listening to you. Every time I listen to you, I learned something new. I learned just now that the educational system has changed since 2004 because of the increased accessibility of information as compared to knowledge. Thank you for walking us through. One of the things that I've really taken away from what you said is the importance of connecting academic pursuits to individualism, if I do say, especially as it ties into academic excellence and holistic development. So thank you so much for sharing that. All right, we're going straight into what I have been looking forward to in this conversation about charting the course as it ties into academic excellence and admissions into the US and the UK's most prestigious universities. For the purpose of this conversation, we are zoning in or locking in on the USA pathway, unlocking the doors to the US most prestigious schools. And that's why Mr. Amos and Dr. Alo have mentioned schools like MIT, Caltech, Harvard, and so on. All right, I'm going to start off the questions. I just want to encourage all our parents that are in the room. Thank you again for joining us. Just a reminder that the Charting the Course program, especially the USA pathway, is very exclusive to brains and butter clientele, especially those within the HighFLYERS community. So links have already been placed in the chat room. If you're interested in joining the HighFLYERS community, please click the link that has been dropped in the chat room. Or if you're interested in getting on course with our USA pathway program, please click the link in the chat room, and we're so excited to get you started. All right, straight off into the questions, and I'll be starting with Dr. Alo. Dr. Alo, of course you knew, right? Of course you knew. Let me ask you this. One of the things that Mr. Amos has mentioned, especially for the US side of things and the US universities, is how one of the ways to access academic excellence as it portrays or as it ties into holistic development is to identify affinity very early on. And so he used himself as an example. His interest in math and solving complex problems led him onto an academic path that has resulted in his particular focus in STEM today. Do you think that that is the same situation with UK universities, or do the UK universities accept a bit more generic thinking in terms of choosing universities and them not directly being tied to individualism, as it were?
I really like that question because it's essentially a question with regards to the differences between the British system and the American system. And there are a lot of differences. And these differences reflect the, shall I say, the societal fabric of these nations, right? So the British are very traditional. I mean, if you even think of the names of the political parties, you've got the Conservatives, who like to preserve things. You know, there's certain buildings you will go to and they're literally stuck in a time capsule. Very traditional setting, very conservative. You've got conservative Labour House of Lords, very traditional environment. But America, however, is a very innovative environment. Now, on the back of this difference, and I'm not saying tradition is bad and innovation is better, far from it, no. I'm just saying that these are different societies and the educational system reflects these differences. Now, what you have on the back of that is that the British educational system is quite academic in nature, and that's why children are expected to focus very early on. So you have children in their sixth form having to narrow down to 3 subjects, which is one of the reasons why the IB, the International Baccalaureate, is becoming a popular option. Because with the IB, you don't have to take just 3 subjects. You can take more, you take 6 subjects, and you have extended project EPQs that you do, right? So there are courses and there are pathways a child can take that isn't necessarily A levels where you have to narrow yourself down to 3 subjects. However, if a child knows that this very early on, this is the path I want to go, I really don't want to bother with more than 3 subjects, that's absolutely fine. So that's the British educational system. So there's a very heavily academic side to it. However, things are changing. Things are changing, and maybe not as fast, but they are changing. And on the American side, however, and Amos can speak to this some more, there's a focus on the holistic being and the entirety of the child's experience, the child's interest. Because something so profound that he said was, it's easy to get the top scores. It's not a problem. You can groom, I mean, you can pay some of the finest Oxbridge tutors or Ivy League tutors to groom a child to get the top scores. But how do you distinguish your child? Because every child, just like our thumbprints, our fingerprints differ, almost 8 billion of us, everyone has their talent, but not everyone has had the opportunity to give expression or to have that talent or, you know, extracurricular interest fine-tuned in such a way that they're distinguished from their peers, and which is what we will do in Charting the Course, the USA pathway. So being able to distinguish your child, being able to have your child stand out from the pack is a major driving force in the USA pathway and getting into those top universities in the US. And I'm sure Amos may want to add, or well, I'm not sure, he may want to add to that. So over to you, Ms. Magda. Let me put him under pressure.
Thank you so much for asking that question. I'm actually going to immediately pivot to Mr. Amos because we are in the question and answer section of the event. Again, I just want to encourage all of our parents and everyone on the call to please leave your questions. That's why we're here, to essentially break down the Charting the Course program and to show you how it directly benefits and enhances your access into the UK and the US's most prestigious schools. Mr. Amos, I have a question for you. One of the things that comes up quite often, especially with our families at Brains and Butter, is that they usually prefer very bespoke and very personalized learning experiences. One of the high points of our business, our expertise at Brains and Butter, is providing personalized educational pathways. Can you just speak a little to that, how the CTC program or how our CTC program is very personalized for students to directly engage and grow? Please go ahead, sir.
So basically, when I meet a child, and by the way, the trend, one of the things about mathematics and physics is that we study patterns. And economists, by the way, are really the smartest people in terms of overall. And the reason is, there's actually a reason. The reason is because economists know math, but they also know people, and they can handle both well, right? So they kind of get the cake in that sense. The physicists tend to not always know people. They don't know how to handle being with people, right? So someone yesterday told me, but Amos, if you focus on STEM and so on, how will the person know how to have interactive, communications, especially with physicists? And I told them, it looks like Nigerians somehow have learned how to handle talking to people. So basically, we need more physicists from Nigeria and India and other places, because I guess that sometimes physicists have a stereotype that they don't know how to talk to people. But what I want to get at, though, is that if somebody's in elementary school, the pattern I've noticed, that was what I was trying to get at, the pattern I noticed is that somewhere around 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, your child has certain tendencies. Your child is talking about things they're excited about. You need to pay attention to that. So when we meet if you meet with a family and you're trying to personalize it, we need to know about those years. We need to know, like, again, when I was young, if you gave me just pens and paper, you made my day. So clearly, I was going to be in academia. It's just, why would, literally, if you could buy me anything from America, I wanted paper and pens, So it's like, what is the deal? My point is, let's hear that story. Once we know that there is some grounds for that child going into a certain field and they have the ability and the talent, That's where you apply nitro, I call it. Let's put you where you need to go, and then let's even get your child to a job shadowing opportunity. Let's get your child to job shadow all these different people. The reason why we're doing all this work again is once we know that that's the track we're going on, then literally your child should do their daily schoolwork, whatever their daily schoolwork is, and then they need to give us this extra time of their lives where we are literally investing in preparing them and personalizing learning. I call it custom-made education. If Elon Musk is sending people to Mars, I think we can try to customize education. That's not very hard to do. My point is we have the resources to do that. And so we need to know the vision part. And once we know the vision part, we need to then take it to the next level and help the child to invest deliberate time every day, every week in growing that ability, right? So electrical engineering. Have you read James Clerk Maxwell's paper on launching the Cavendish Laboratory? Why not? You love electrical engineering. These are the things your child will be doing outside of school. They will help you. Okay, actually, sorry, let me say one more thing, Ms. Mark. This will make sense here. So think of it this way. There's a famous passage that, in the Bible that says, he who wants to gain his life will lose it, but he who loses his life for my sake will keep it. So here's what I'm trying to bring here. If you want to go to MIT and you make MIT your goal, you might end up potentially not going to MIT because maybe you put so much energy there, but you didn't actually do it out of a passion and a love for the subject you want to study at MIT. That's one way to do it. But here's another way to do it. I love electricity. I love magnets. I'm playing with electricity and magnets, and I'm writing the different things I'm learning about it. Just because of my general propensity for doing the things I love for fun, when it's now time to apply to MIT, I'll be all set because I was doing the thing I loved, and now I tell them how much I love the thing I was doing. You see, you didn't make them your goal and then try to make your life aligned to getting into their school. You made your passion grow, and by doing that, when it was time to apply, you just simply told them about your passion, and they like you because you're telling them the thing that you would do on a Saturday night, even if you didn't have to do it. Do you see what I'm getting at? And so that's why the vision is important. And by the way, again, I'm not angry at anybody. Sorry if my voice is loud. That's why it's important to get the vision part. And then Amos or Brains and Butter, does this as well. We're trying to then tailor that learning experience for you that is separate from your general schoolwork, which you need to do over here. And we give you all you need to do over here. And I literally write that recipe for families based on their own calling for that the calling that child has. Do you see what I mean? Yeah. Oh, you're muted.
I do see what you mean. Thank you very much, Mr. Amos. Wow. Thank you so much for that answer. All right. I have questions in the chat room. It's the passion. Absolutely, Mr. Victor. Thank you so much. I just wanted to add that Mr. Victor Tafa is actually having such a beautiful big brother moment in the chat room right now because Mr. Victor Tafa is the elder brother of Mr. Amos and actually was the one that connected us and made the introductions with Mr. Amos. So thank you so much, Mr. Victor. That was such a very heartwarming moment Miss Mark loves. And it is definitely the passion. One of the reasons why we're so invested in this collaboration is the passion. We want to get your children the most effective pathway on the way to locking in your legacy. So thank you very much for that response, Mr. Amos. The CTC program is very, very personalized because it's our goal to set the students and the children on bespoke and tailored pathways that will open up the doors for them. Thank you so much. All right, I will be taking questions now. Mr. Amos, yes, please go ahead.
So I don't know if you guys can see my screen, but I'll try. It says the name of the two books I'm holding. I just want to give you a point. I'll read the names. One is called Becoming an Engineer. That's the name of the book. The other one is called Decoding Medical Careers. So when you're a part of the community, here's what I'm saying. You get books like this. So if your child says, I want to be an engineer, they literally read a book that tells them about all the types of engineers. And they can, because for me, for example, I'm drawn to electrical engineering. If I had gone into engineering school, I would have gone that way. I don't like building bridges. Do you see? But some people like building bridges. So they go to civil engineering. Decoding Medical Careers. Here's all the branches of medicine. Like, read about them. And then I can connect you to people that work in them. So the point is, that's personalized. I just wanted to tell people there's actual resources readily available to help with that.
Thank you so much, Mr. Amos. I beg your pardon. I definitely see another doctorate or a doctorate in your future. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. All right, I'm going to be going straight to the questions. Again, I want to encourage all of our parents and anyone on the call. Please leave your questions in the chat room. Our teammates are here to take your questions. And of course, we will be happy to take any questions that you might have even after today's session. All right, I have a question from Mr. Okoli. Please, I think I'm going to direct this one to Dr. Alo, actually. Please, how are students assessed during the course, and what is the criteria for success? I think this question is speaking to some of the milestones, some of the study milestones. I know that we can't divulge all of the information about the modules, but if you just speak to some of the progress milestones, perhaps the examinations, etc., I'm sure that that would be a good answer. Thank you so much, Ma.
Wow. You know, how do you measure growth? And is that argument with objective and subjective measures? So we will have objective ways of assessing the child's progress, because there are so many exam preparation tools and tests. There's so many diagnostic tests that they can take that will assess how well they're performing academically. But one of the things our parents need to know is that this is outside of the academic. So it is bringing in the academic preparation, because that's part of what they will get, but it's adding on top of that, distinguishing this child from his or her peers and really bringing out what is different about the child. So you'll see that in the personal statements. You'll see that in the confidence with which the child speaks. You'll see that in mock interviews. So that's how you will begin to see the progress that is happening with the child on a subjective level. But objectively speaking, there are many tests, many academic tests that the children will take, and their scores would give an academic profile of the child's performance over the course of time. But please remember, it is not a maths course or an English course or a science course. No, that is not what this is. It is more than that. It is about helping the child really chart the course and know what are their interests, what is that long-term goal that they have, and how do we fine-tune that. So it's that vision-based model that really sets them on the right path for them to take off, get into those top universities. The schools, the tutors will do their bit, and great thing is that Amos can come in he's a maths tutor, right? So he brings in the maths for the students that take maths, but not everybody is STEM inclined, but Amos will tell you everyone should have STEM on their agenda, and I agree with him, right? So they're the teachers that will do the academic side of things. We are literally fine-tuning the vision, charting the course, giving them access to expert mentors that would really help them think about their long-term goals and have flourishing lives and careers.
Beautiful, beautiful answer, Dr. Alo. Beautiful answer. Thank you. I love the way your passion for this course really shines through where you speak. You're so involved. Thank you so much, Dr. Alo. I have two questions here that I'm going to ask together, and they really speak to your expertise, especially with UK, right? With the UK, do I want to say environment? So these two questions are just for you. The first question is from Shei. Thank you, Shei, for your question. Shei says, for children in secondary school in Nigeria, could it be possible for the child to start sixth form in the UK at age 17? Right next to that question, I will ask another from Rita Adu Pepra. Thank you very much for your question. Can a child in boarding school get the opportunity to do the course due to time restrictions? So I'm sure you see how those questions are brother and sister. So please go ahead, Dr. Alo. Over to you, Ma.
I'm going to take my time with this one. I know we just have 10 minutes, but these are really fantastic questions. Okay, so let me start with Mr. or Mrs. Shei's question on whether a child from Nigeria can start sixth form at the age of 17. The answer is yes, yes, yes. However, let's distill that further. Sixth form is the last form before going on to university. It's the last stage. So there are 6 forms. It's actually a traditional categorization of the different stages in senior in senior education, let's put it that way, in senior school, right? So you have the first form, second form, third form, fourth form, fifth form, and sixth form. Now, sixth form is 2 years, year 12 and year 13. But if this child is in Nigeria and the child has already done year 12, which is the SS3, if the child is in a school that is taking the Nigerian curriculum and the child has done year 12 essentially already, it's then for you to ask yourself, do you want your child to do another 2 years of A levels, so year 12 again and then year 13, or do you want the child to go into what they call a university foundation program, which is just for 1 year? So it depends on what curriculum, the curriculum that is being covered in the school your child attends in Nigeria. And if the child has done year 12, so SS3, using the Nigerian curriculum, yes, by all means, you can do 2 years again of A levels or the IB program here in the UK. But please remember to think, what is the long-term goal? What is the long-term vision? Are you thinking of higher education or tertiary education in the UK or in the US? And then you can now work with the end in mind, literally start to work your way that way. Okay, so that's Shei's question. Okay, so
I'll read it again.
Yes.
Can a child in boarding school get the opportunity to do this course due to time restrictions?
Yes, I love that question, Mrs. Adupepra. Wow. So our children in boarding school who are below year 12, so from year 7, in fact, year 4, we have some year 4 boarders. Anyone below year 12 can definitely be a part of this course, but they're going to be in a different community, right? That is under brings and butter, because their timetabling, their scheduling is different from those in the HighFLYERS community who are aged between 16 to 18. The short answer to the question is yes. Yes, but it's a slightly different package for them. And it also depends on what year they're in, because the GCSE year is 1 year. We don't want to overwhelm them because then they're preparing for exams. But we can obviously have them in earlier before that. So it's basically a case of scheduling that is different, but the course is going to be redesigned and repurposed for children in boarding school under the age of 16. So please, if you're interested still, do fill the form. There's one of the questions ask you, what year is your child in? Because we want to see how many people are in certain cohorts and how we can repurpose the timetable of this for them, right? Because they're younger children. Amos actually believes that we should start this earlier than the age of 16. He's a firm believer in that, and he can shed some more light on that. So yeah, so maybe I should hand over to Amos or Miss Mark.
Mr. Amos, would you like to infer on this?
Yeah, so one of the things that is really critical is that I know I've used different schools like MIT as an example, but I'm not joking, there's at least 1,000 very good universities in America, right? America has a lot of good universities. Now, of course, in the top 100, again, very, very good schools. You can apply to most of these schools while you are 16 years old and be okay. But if you're talking about these top universities, some of the ones I'm talking about, there are organizations that will charge you, like Dr. Allo mentioned, a lot of money, and they actually expect you to start in 6th grade or 7th grade, which in America is JSS 1. They want you in JSS 1 because, again, when you apply in SS2 or when you're 16 or 17, they will ask you, can you tell us about your life? The problem is if you didn't start in JSS 1, you were not encouraged to be taking part in certain extracurricular activities. You don't have experience. So then at this point, guess what? I'm sorry, it's too late. So that's why it's best to start. And so the STEM Excellence program I actually started that in 6th grade. And we can talk about that some other time as far as why not now necessarily, just I don't want to take too much time on it, but I just wanted to say I intentionally start in 6th grade. And the short answer is because when you're 12, 13, 14, 15 when you're in that age range, you have more time on your hands. You generally don't have a job. And I joke and tell people you generally don't have a relationship you shouldn't be in sometimes, right? In those early years. So guess what you have time for? Read. I read a lot when I was younger. And how many children are reading a lot today? Isaac Newton is who he is, but do people know that Isaac Newton read a lot? So my point is, get the children when they're young, get them reading a lot, and that will take them far later on, because you can pull a lot of information from the bank that you've stored. So anyways, now I think about how NEPA used to take light in Nigeria. That was a good thing because it allowed me to read a lot. And so let me just say, I agree with Dr. Alo, start early. If you're in boarding school, start early. You can use the resources online in your boarding school.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Mr.
Just
Amos.
quickly,
Right?
I just want to very quickly add to that. It's what are they reading as well?
Oh, yes.
What are they reading? You know, I recently got a bit frustrated with my children. I was like, I'm tired of seeing all these fiction books. I love fiction. I don't mind fiction. I love a good fiction story. But I'm like, you guys, and you know, you tell them the story. When I was younger, I had encyclopedias. I was studying Britannica. But you guys are just reading fiction. So when Diary of a Wimpy Kid, I'm like, no, Diary of a Wimpy Kid, enough. Enough, Diary of a Wimpy Kid. I am not raising a wimpy kid. What are they reading? What are they reading? So that's
what
another
are
thing.
they reading? Wow, you're absolutely right. First of all, Dario be wimpy kid. I hear that, and I definitely hear the need to upgrade. And like Mr. Amos said, begin to groom the next generation of thinkers. We have Albert Einsteins that are reading Diary of a Wimpy Kid, and we really, really need to change that. I hear you. I hear you loud and clear. Thank you so much, Ma. Back to Mr. Amos as we prepare to round off. While the questions are coming in, thank you so much for sending your questions. We're going to take them as quickly as possible. I just want to remind us the links in the chat room are for you to engage. Please indicate if you would like to join the HighFLYERS community for more resources like this and more personalized engagements, or if you're interested in getting on the USA pathway as quickly as possible, the team is standing by and ready to engage. So thank you very much. Mr. Amos, I have a question for you. How do college credits impact the timeline for graduation? Is it possible to graduate earlier by accumulating more credits through deliberate planning?
Yes. So you need 120. Generally, people take 30 credits every year. So they take 30 credits in their first year, 30 credits in their second, and so on and so forth. However, like I graduated in 3.5 years with...
I'm so sorry, Mr. Amos. I'm so sorry. I have another question that is directly tied to this. So let me just read that so you can just give us a very comprehensive answer. Would that be all right?
Yes, yes.
Thank you so much, sir. I apologize for cutting in. So the next question is, how can students apply the principles of deliberate practice? That's something you mentioned. Deliberate practice when preparing for SAT, ACTs, which are crucial for earning college credits. So the question is, will more college credits or will better college credits help me graduate faster? And how do I apply the principles of deliberate planning when I'm preparing for my SATs to get better credits? Go ahead, sir.
Okay, so quickly the answer to this, and this will be one of those modules that people can watch and see the breakdown. But the idea is that you need 120 credits to graduate from an American university. Those 120 credits can be done 30 credits each year. But note that there's a fall semester, there's a spring semester, and there's a summer semester. Many people don't take classes in the summer, but it is an option. So what you can do is you can technically take 30 credits during the school year, so in the fall and in the spring. That's what I generally did. But then in the summer, you can take maybe 9 credits, right? So I graduated in 3.5 years with a major and a minor, which normally would have taken people 4 or 4.5. But but by God's grace, I graduated in 3.5. So I saved money, I saved time. There was no reason to be wasting time on certain things. I technically could have done it sooner, maybe 3 years. Now, that's important, especially if you want to go for a PhD, because that's another 5 years. Or if you want to go for a PhD in math, that's 10 years. So it's important that's why it really depends, make the most of those hours you have so that you're not going to school for 4 years and then plus 10 years. Okay, so now deliberate practice is helpful in that it helps you learn materials more efficiently. This applies to many fields, and I'll tell you the name of the book that goes into detail. It's called Peak. by Anders Ericsson, Peak. And our students, actually, that's one of the books they get to read. So Dr. Alo, I actually compiled a list of books for 6 to 12 graders to read. So they don't have an excuse. They have a whole bank. Even Harvard has a list called the Harvard Classics. So imagine if you write in your essay to Harvard, as I was reading in the Harvard Classics, I mean, just think of how cool your application becomes. Because you tell them, oh, I've read the books in your classics. So Harvard has a classic. There's a Western history, Western civilization classic list. So anyway, so the students can use deliberate practice, learn the principles from Anders Ericsson to study for the ACT, for the SAT, for the IGCSEs, for the A-levels. Deliberate practice is changing the landscape of education. I'm not joking. The whole landscape. Because the guy is the same guy that did the 10,000-hour rule. He's the one who did that research. And he said that if you take 10,000 hours with a coach and deliberate practice, where you're correcting yourself along the way in the areas that you find that you're weak, you will be exceptional. That is a law. You will be exceptional. The radiologists are using it today. Football players are using it today. The same mentality. So those 120 credits, if you don't want to go to a university like Harvard, but let's say you wanted to go to a university like the University of Wisconsin, I can help you take out 60 of those credits by taking those online courses I showed you earlier on in my presentation. So the point is, some people could take 60 of those credits before they even come to America. Like they can actually get college credit before they ever show up. And so there are strategic ways to reduce the 120 down to 90. Again, one class, for example, is like calculus. Calculus can count like 3 credits. Does that make sense? You can get those 3 credits for calculus either before coming to university or on the side while you're taking your regular university coursework. So there's a lot of ways to navigate, but let's just say the worst case scenario, 4 years, break it down into 30 credits every semester and get yourself a job on campus for 20 hours a week. That's a good load for anybody.
So I just want to clarify something. So, one of the things you said, Amos, is those of us who studied economics, we understand people, right? And we also understand math. So I know that some of our parents are like, what are college credits? Like, I'm not getting this college credits flow. What does that really mean? Is it something I get before I get into university? Or is it something that happens when I'm in the university? So if you could just give like a dummy version of this whole concept of college credits and how deliberate practice comes in there, that would really help a number of our parents who may not have studied in the system and don't quite understand it.
Thank you very much, Dr. Alo. I think that I had a little bit of technical difficulty. So please let me know if you can hear me now. Am I back up?
Yes, you're back up. And Mr. Amos is just about to answer a question.
Oh, great. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Dr. Alo. I really appreciate it. Okay, Mr. Amos, what question? Would you like me to read it to you again, or is it the last question about preparing for the course ahead?
No, so
yeah, Dr. Alo?
Yes. Okay,
yeah, Dr. Alo wanted me to clarify the word college credit. So, Dr. Alo, that's an excellent point. And let me say this. If you're doing things with a sort of charting the course to the US, I think we need to create a glossary of terminology because you guys speak British English, we speak American English, and there's some words that don't mean the same thing to both of us. So for example, college credits, people might think I'm talking about secondary school, like college. In America, that actually means university college credits. Sorry, so I should be very clear on that. Even though some days I claim that I'm British, I wanna speak like the British. But anyway, so I think we need to what we need to do is this: the university college credits are what you need to graduate from the university. Every class you take in the university counts for a certain amount of college credits. And if you remember what Dr. Alo said earlier, she mentioned that in America, we allow you time to have different subjects you study. We don't box you in early, and that's true. The first 2 years of universities, in some universities, you take something called general college credits. Let me give you a practical example. And I'm sorry, I know I've gone a little longer, but let me give you an example. If you want to study chemistry, like I did, so when I studied chemistry, I had to take economics as a course, as a general education requirement. I had to take psychology as a course, as a general education requirement. Those are not connected to chemistry necessarily, but they are required to graduate. So of that 120 credits, maybe 60 of them are more like chemistry and math classes. But then the other 60 are like English 101, English 102, psychology, anthropology, communications. What we do, part of what my organization in the US does, is we help you eliminate some of those 60 that are general college credits, because they don't technically have anything to do with your own degree, but you still have to take them. So we try to help you do it with the least amount of pain and the least amount of cost, so that you can focus those 60 credits on your chemistry or computer science or economics or physics or biology and so on and so forth. So that's what I mean by college credits. It's university credits required to graduate.
Thank you very much for that answer, sir. Please let me know that everyone can hear me. Please,
Yes,
can
we
you
can.
hear me so I can go on?
Yes, we can.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you so much for that answer, Mr. Amos. And definitely part of the CTC curriculum would be to have a glossary, just like you suggested, because we understand that some of our families may not be familiar with the terminologies that are being used. And so we definitely taking that into account. Thank you so much to everybody for your patience, your attention. Just before we round up, I have to invite Dr. Alo again to do a bit of emphasis on some of the benefits. And to do that, I would like her to answer 2 questions. And I'll put the 2 questions together. And it's going to be the last thing that Dr. Alo will answer before we wrap up today. The 2 questions are, number 1, how can students best prepare for the course before it begins in November? And what are the immediate next steps if one decides to join the Charting the Course USA pathway? So Dr. Alo, of course, this is a natural segue into that segment, and then I hand the floor over to you. I yield the mic to you, Ma. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Miss Mark. I'm going to answer that question, but it's just occurred to me that there's something we haven't really paid attention to, and it's a question I regularly get, and I understand the question. So, Mr. Amos, I'd like you to please come back to the screen so we can speak to this question. It's about scholarships, fees, and financing your education. Can you please speak to us about what that looks like for those who are thinking of a USA pathway? Because I mean, you showed us 80, 60, 30, even 30. Even 30 is not, it's not $30, it's $30,000. And many of our families, I mean, one of the things I find fascinating about you is you've got 7 children. 7 children. I'm just thinking school fees. So can we talk about scholarships and fees and financing? And then we'll answer the question.
Yeah, so time will not permit. Maybe what I need to do is a whole long YouTube presentation on how, again, if you understand the American education system, there are so many ways there's so many ways to flourish within it, but also to save a lot of money. And these are things that I will talk about in detail, maybe on one of our masterclass or sort of modules. And here's where that comes in. So yes, I have 7 children, but I'm not as worried about the cost of college for them. And part of it is because, for my example, my son is 12 years old, and he's actually in algebra right now. Algebra is usually done in 8th grade. He's going to finish Algebra 1 and Algebra 2. He's going to be in calculus in 8th grade. He's going to be in calculus 4 years before everybody else, or about 3 or 4 years before. And we're not even like pressuring the guy. And that's the same with all the kids. What we've realized is that if you use a mastery-based approach and deliberate practice, your children will start getting college credits early. So he's going to get 60 college credits early. Remember on the graph, I showed 80, 60, 30, and then there was a line that said 5. That 5 is what we do for families. We can help you get those 60 credits at a rate of 5,000 per year. Yeah, so that when you get to university, that 60 is not 60 anymore. It's actually 30. That 30 is not 30 anymore. It's now 15. We can literally cut you down to 50% off by being strategic in your dual enrollment. So dual enrollment is where, if you're taking calculus, the same calculus in New General Mathematics in Nigeria is the same calculus in America. It's the same calculus that Isaac Newton and Gottfried Leibniz gave us. So my point is, why don't you kill 2 birds with 1 stone? And for those who like birds, I'm sorry I'm using that analogy, but why don't you kill 2 birds with 1 stone? Why don't you do the same coursework once and cover two points at the same time? That's what my son is doing. The class my son is taking right now, I'm actually teaching some of those lessons at the university right now. I'm teaching the same concept. So it's like, why is he going to then go there and take the class again, right? So So number one is be strategic in your time now. Those children that are trying to finish the video game levels, tell them to go and be working on their reading and practice and dual enrollment. They should be getting extra credit now. Now, how is the second way you get scholarship? So the first thing is, let's slash our tuition right away. That's number one. That's what we just did by taking college credits early. The second thing you do is, the higher you score in your SATs and your ACTs, and the better you write essays, you can submit that to foundations, or you can apply to the university scholarship options available to you. Many students will qualify for some of those. So that's another way to get funding, through academic merit. Stand out on your GPA, stand out on your ACT and SAT, and they will give you, sometimes the university will give you like 5,000 for that. They'll give you, basically there's a scale. The higher your score, the more the scholarship. There's universities that use that scale. So I have people that will call me and say, please, can you help my child get up to a 27 on the ACT? Because that's going to give them another 20,000 or 30,000 off. And so we work on it and we get them what they need. So number two is academic merit. Number one, slash your price tag right away by taking college credits early for cheap. Number two, get a high score on the SAT and the ACT, apply to foundations, apply for scholarships. And again, we can guide you through those processes, no problem. The university scholarship application is pretty straightforward. By applying to the university, you already are getting into that, and you standing out will open doors for you. Number three is called financial aid. If you stand out, you have something to offer to the university and there's financial aid available, they will also give that as a factor sometimes. So there are different ways you can do that. Now, number four, how do you save? Work on campus. There's a lot of jobs for international students, and I can coach them on how to apply for those jobs. Get those jobs, and then you start getting paid about $15 an hour. That doesn't sound like a lot of money, but you do that for 20 hours a week. That gives you, about $1,000 a month. Right there, the child has their pocket money. They're working for it. They're getting it. So those are some ways to get funding. I'll give you one quick example of a friend of mine. I have some friends that we came around the same time. One of them was so good at his SAT, ACT application and his essays and everything. He ended up getting a full ride to the University of Massachusetts, to Amherst University in Massachusetts, and they paid for his plane tickets. Not only did he get a full scholarship, they paid to bring him here, and he got a 4 years full ride. So you can do that. That's doable, and it comes down to, again, how are your essay writing skills? What is your ACT, SAT score? What are your experiences that you can tell them? Put that in your resume as you apply, or your CV. Tell them you are open, you would love to get a scholarship, and you are willing to do the extra work. And many universities will give you a chance. If you come here and you maybe have to pay $30 for the first year, that's a worst case scenario. But let's say you had to, guess what? You can apply as a current student for more scholarships. And that's where you also then, again, reach out. Maybe Brains and Butter can, again, keep in touch with you. Reach out if you need guidance on that later, because I can give you some notes for that when you arrive. Because when you arrive, more scholarships open for you.
Thank you very much for that answer, Mr. Amos. And just like Mr. Amos said, we're very happy to guide you through. There are opportunities that are available, just like he said, for reduced tuitions and for enjoying an academic ride on scholarships and other benefits. Thank you, Mr. Amos. All right, I yield the mic to you, Dr. Alo. Thank you, ma.
Even I want to be on this course. I want to enroll for this course. And I just want to encourage everyone on this call. Please do not leave this call without filling the form. We are not going to do this again. What we will do is we will send the YouTube link. You can watch the replay. But this is the second time we've done this. We're not doing it again. The course begins in November. How do you prepare for the course? Literally fill the form. And again, don't leave this call without filling the form. Let's have your details. Even if you're thinking, oh, my child is in year 7, or I'm not thinking of the USA pathway, just get on the list, get on the form, because there is something your child stands to gain by being a part of the community and by exposure to the course. So it's like how some children will prepare for what we call 11+ exams, but they're not necessarily going to use the results from the 11+ exams. It's the exposure, it's the rigor, that they have been exposed to and what they learn as a result of that. There's so much, even for adults. I'm sure some adults were listening to this and they're like, wow, who is Rene Descartes? Who are these amazing people? How do I even know what my vision is? How do I fine tune this and my interest and all of that? And can I just say, Amos's son, his score on chess.com, when we saw his score on chess.com, I'm like, oh my goodness, how is that a 12-year-old child playing chess at this level? This is just insane. And this is a child that is literally 4 years ahead of calculus. So if someone that has 7 children is telling you he's not worried about school fees or financing their education because of the measures he's putting in place right now, then you know you want to get into that space and prepare your child. The investments you make now will save you in the future. Honestly, it really will. It's an investment, but it is so worth the investment. It's one investment that would yield a very, very high return on investment. So many benefits. Everything that we have shared today, from access to the community, to the fact that you have expert mentors working with your child, you have the universities and career preparation, you have the academic support, you have strategic road mapping with timelines and like really tailored support to your child. Talk less of the exposure to the materials that will help your child fine-tune their vision, fine-tune their interest, fine-tune their long-term goals, and really navigate this path to greatness a lot better and more efficiently than if they're left to daddy and mommy doing the very best that they can. It takes a village, and you really, really need to have this course in your life. Let me just put it that way. So do not leave this place without filling the form.
No better way to put it, Dr. Alo. No better way to put it. One thing I want to emphasize is, by virtue of our clientele, something that we know very well is that our parents make extra effort to prepare their children for legacy. Legacy and heritage is a very big deal with our families, and we just want to assure you that this program is one of the tested ways to put your child on the right path to solidify that legacy. Here at Brains and Butter, we're not just interested in great scores and great grades. No, we're interested in a great life, and we're offering you the tools and the resources that will give you access to the opportunities that you need to have that great life. I just want to encourage you, if you are on this call and you have stayed till this time, you are one of a privileged few, and the next best step to get you started is to engage with any of the links that are currently in the chat room. If you would like to join the HighFLYERS community for access to this course and many other resources, please click the link in the chat room. Or if you would like to get started on the USA pathway, we can't wait to get started with you. Please click the link in the chat room as well. We also would love to hear your feedback, so please click the feedback link in the chat room as well, so that we can hear from you and also send you any more resources. Thank you very much for your patience on this call. We want to say a big thank you again to Dr. Alo, who is the lead educational consultant at Brains and Butter. I can see Dr. Alo's hands up already. Dr. Alo, please go ahead, ma.
I am so sorry. There's something that excites me about this course, and I really need to share. Has anyone heard of the PayPal Mafia before? PayPal Mafia. Elon Musk is one of the PayPal Mafia. Okay, so after this call, please go and look up the PayPal Mafia. Right. Now, why does that excite me? Thank you, Labs A. Thank you. We're so glad you found this informative. Why does the PayPal Mafia excite me? This is the very first cohort. I know that's emphasis on another level, very first. It's the first cohort of the Charting the Course USA pathway. And we are actually going to be studying them and following them so closely, because I truly believe that they're going to do so well on the back of this course. So we have those who are doing this within the HighFLYERS community, and then we have those who are going to do this in a younger community that we have as well, right? And we're going to be almost like trailing their journey in a way and seeing how they're succeeding. Harvard does this, top institutions do this. And I'm really excited about the possibility of some PayPal mafia, golden set type groups emerging as a result of what they would get exposed to on this course. So honestly, you don't want to miss it. And once you fill the form, we'll send you more information with the details, the fees, the cost, the investment required, and all of that. So thank you. Sorry to have gone on for longer.
Absolutely not. Thank you, Dr. Alo. Your feedback or your mention is the cherry on this delicious pie that we have had the pleasure of enjoying today. Thank you for mentioning that. It's very, very important to mention here at Brains and Butter. Like I like to say, we're not just about getting you started. One of our major points as an organization, as a family, is to hold your hands all the way through. And so we come up with programs and products like this to not just get you started, but to keep you excellent. All right. Thank you very much. One more time, I would like to say a big thank you, first of all, to Dr. Alo, to Mr. Amos, and to every single family, every single parent represented on this call. We are so grateful for your time. We can't wait to get started. Once again, please fill the links in the chat room if you would like to join the HighFLYERS community, if you want to get started on the USA pathway, or if you want to leave your for feedback, or if you just want to get more information. Our team is standing by to assist you as much as we can. Wow, it's been almost 2 hours of learning, and it doesn't feel a second, over 10 minutes, because what a time this has been. Thank you again to everybody that's joined us today. We're very grateful for your time and very grateful for the privilege to have spoken with you. We wish you a very beautiful rest of the day, and we look forward to helping you chart the course to your academic excellence. Thank you so much. My name is Miss Mark. It has been a privilege to be your moderator today, and we look forward to hearing from you. Please enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Miss Mark. You are amazing.